They say reality cracked for exactly 4 minutes and 13 seconds. A moment when shadows moved like liquid and light bent in ways it shouldn't. When it was over, 80,000 people had changed. The government calls them spatial manipulation anomalies. The media calls them powered individuals. They call themselves Parallaxers. I document their stories, not because I want to, but because they demand to be told. The shadows whisper them to me. The spaces between moments reveal them, and reality itself seems to be using my words as a blueprint for something larger. These are their stories, or maybe their warnings, or maybe they're prophecies of what's still to come. These are the Parallaxers. When anxiety shatters reality, where do the pieces fall? Raylyn Weaver never meant to erase her roommate from existence. Now she leads an underground movement of displaced people running from a government that wants to contain them. But in a world where reality itself is breaking, sometimes the biggest threat isn't what's hunting you, it's what's leaking through the cracks.
I was microwaving ramen when I accidentally erased my roommate from existence. One moment, Jade was complaining about her dating life. The next, static where a person used to be. That's how I, Raylyn Weaver, discovered I was a parallaxer. They say trauma triggers the change. For me, it wasn't the big stuff, not my parents' divorce or getting laid off. It was the quiet breakdown in my kitchen at 2 a.m., listening to Jade's familiar rant about Tinder while drowning in student debt and existential dread. The mundane finally cracked me.
Just breathe.
Dr. Martinez had always told me during therapy.
Anxiety can't actually hurt you.
Turns out she was wrong. The first week was hell. I kept displacement jumping whenever I got nervous, appearing on rooftops, in subway tunnels, once in the middle of a board meeting at Goldman Sachs. Each jump left reality a little more fractured, like cracks spreading through glass. That's how Ryan found me, huddled behind a dumpster after accidentally teleporting a pizza delivery guy to Times Square. Turns out the pizza guy had displacement powers as well. Ryan looked more like an accountant than a powered individual, with his wire-rimmed glasses and cardigan. But when he moved, space bent around him like light through water.
The government calls it spatial manipulation anxiety disorder.
He explained, helping me up.
I call it being cosmically screwed.
Ryan explained BACR, or the Bureau of Anomalous Containment and Research, telling me stories of them kidnapping parallaxers and using them for secret projects. He said he could help me figure out my powers and how to protect myself. Ryan ran a support group for what he called displacement cases, parallaxers whose powers manifested through mental health issues. We met in an abandoned warehouse in Queens, sharing stories and practicing control. That's where I met Danny, a former EMT who could create pocket dimensions when his PTSD flared up, and Rachel, whose depression could literally drain the light from rooms. For 3 months, things almost felt normal. I learned to control my jumps, started carrying anxiety meds in a lead-lined container. Turns out they work better when they haven't been accidentally teleported to different dimensions, and even managed to hold down a remote job. Then I discovered the truth about Ryan. It started with little things. The way he'd tense up when we discussed government containment facilities. How he always seemed to know when new displacement cases would manifest. Rachel noticed it too.
Have you ever wondered,
she whispered during one session,
why we never see the people who lose control again?
I followed him one night after group. He displacement jumped across the city, and I matched him, jump for jump, my anxiety actually helping for once. He led me to a sleek building in Manhattan, where I watched him meet with men in suits. Through the window, I saw monitors displaying familiar faces, group members who had moved away.
Impressive tracking.
Ryan said behind me. I hadn't heard him teleport.
Most people can't follow my jumps.
You're working for them, I said. BACR.
I'm helping people, Raylyn. Some parallaxers can't be rehabilitated. They're dangers to themselves and others. Identify the unstable ones before they cause major incidents.
What about me? Am I dangerous? His silence was answer enough. The thing about anxiety, I said, feeling the familiar tingle of an incoming jump, is that it makes you prepare for every scenario. I triggered the displacement beacon in my pocket, tech borrowed from one of Ryan's private sessions. The air crackled as 24 displacement cases materialized around us, every person I'd secretly warned over the past week. Danny, Rachel, even Pizza Guy, whose name was Steve and who had gotten surprisingly good at dimensional portals.
The problems with betrayal?
Rachel said, darkness pooling around her feet.
Is that it tends to trigger people's symptoms.
What followed was pure chaos. Ryan tried to jump away, but Danny's pocket dimensions kept him contained. Government agents poured from the building, armed with power dampeners. I saw Steve sending them to random dimensions with carefully tossed pizza dough. Rachel's darkness provided cover as we freed the contained Parallaxers. In the end, it came down to Ryan and me, floating in a bubble of displaced space above Manhattan.
You don't understand what you've done. Some powers need to be contained, studied, and cataloged for the sake of humanity.
No, I replied, feeling strangely calm. What you never understood is that our anxiety isn't the problem. It's how we've been taught to see it. We're not broken. We're just different. Ryan lunged at me and grabbed me. We wrestled as we began teleporting around the city, into people's homes, the subway, a Walmart. People looked on in awe as we phased in and out of existence. Ryan was far stronger and more in tune with his powers than I was. I knew I wasn't going to defeat him, but I could give myself and the team some time to escape. I dug deep, reached into the depths of my anxiety, using all that I know and learned. I grabbed Ryan and teleported as far as I could imagine. We appeared in the Himalayas on top of a mountain peak. Ryan looked around in awe.
How were you able to do that?
I honestly didn't know the answer myself. I had never teleported outside the city before. Ryan seemed angry now, as if he was jealous of what just happened. You know I could have taken you in, right? I saved you. And this is what you do to me? He rushed towards me, but not before I teleported away, leaving Ryan alone on the cold mountain. I managed to teleport back to the facility. I immediately began freeing the trapped Parallaxers from their cages, teleporting to safety. Within hours, every screen in Times Square was broadcasting our faces. Everyone who was at the facility. Rachel, Danny, everyone. The ACR was labeling us as dangerous, unstable elements. Rachel found us a temporary haven in an abandoned subway station she'd modified with her darkness manipulation. As we gathered our rescued Parallaxers, 17 scared, angry people with powers they barely understood, I realized we'd just declared war on the government's containment program.
They'll never stop hunting us,
Danny said, tending to a teenager we'd freed who could turn anxiety attacks into electromagnetic pulses.
BACR will be after us now.
Then we don't stay still, I replied, watching reality fracture and heal around my fingers. We keep moving, and we find others before they do. That was 6 months ago. Now we're what the media calls the displacement underground, though Pizza Guy, Steve, keeps pushing for the Paranormal Activity Squad. We're 32 strong, operating in constantly shifting cells across the country. Rachel's darkness powers have evolved. She can now create permanent shadows we use as safe houses. Danny's pocket dimensions have become our emergency exits and supply caches. We developed a system for finding new Parallaxers before the government does. Jade, now fully recovered from her Jersey experience, monitors social media for signs of power manifestations. Her dating app expertise turned out to be surprisingly useful for tracking digital patterns. Who knew? Our latest rescue was a college student in Michigan who started reversing time whenever she had panic attacks about finals. We got to her just as the containment teams arrived. The fight that followed taught me that my powers were still evolving. Under pressure, I didn't just displace things anymore. I could swap locations of objects and people instantly, turning the agent's tactical formation into chaos. But we've lost people too. Last month, Ryan led a strike team that caught one of our cells in Seattle. And 2 weeks ago, we discovered why the government wants to contain us so badly. Some Parallaxers' powers don't just grow. They merge. During a close call in Chicago, Rachel's darkness and Danny's dimensional manipulation accidentally combined, creating what we now call void spaces, patches of reality that simply cease to exist. The implications terrified us. If two Parallaxers could accidentally alter the fundamental nature of space-time, what could 32 do? What could thousands do? Maybe Ryan was right about the dangers. But his solution? Containment, control, suppression? That was never going to work. You can't contain evolution. We've started hearing whispers about other groups like ours. A collective in Europe calling themselves the Reality Brigade. A loose network in Asia known as the Harmony Chain. All Parallaxers, all running, all searching for answers. Last week during a supply run, I found my old anxiety journal. The list was still there. Things that are real. I added some new entries. 4, the family we've built. 5, the choice we keep making every day. 6, the possibility that we're becoming something entirely new. My therapist used to say that anxiety was just our body's way of preparing for imagined futures. Now I wonder if she was almost right. Maybe our collective trauma was preparing us for a future no one could have imagined, a future we're still shaping. Yesterday, we got word of 3 new manifestations in different cities. The government teams are already mobilizing. Rachel's preparing the shadow networks. Danny's mapping emergency dimensions, and Steve's ordered pizza for everyone. Somehow it always arrives wherever we are. I also managed to find Jade. Turns out I had teleported her to the Bahamas. She was mad at first, but eventually didn't mind too much. I should be terrified. By all rights, my anxiety should be through the roof. Instead, I feel something different. Purpose. Every time we save someone new, we're not just building a resistance. We're building a community, a family of people who understand what it means to have your broken pieces become something powerful. We'll keep running, keep fighting, keep rescuing others like us. And maybe, somewhere between the displaced spaces and pocket dimensions, between the darkness and the void, we'll find out what we're really becoming. Because the final rule of being a Parallaxer still stands. There are no rules, only choices. And we choose to face whatever's coming together.
Ready?
Rachel asks, her darkness already pooling around our feet. Through the shadows, I can see the coordinates of our next rescue. I take a deep breath, feeling the familiar fracture of reality around my fingers. Ready. Time to displace ourselves into another tomorrow. The end, or rather, the beginning.
Numbers don't lie, but reality does. Michael Zhao sees probabilities floating above everyone's head, a curse that made him valuable to the wrong people. Now he's running from an organization that wants to weaponize his ability, carrying secrets that could shatter the financial world. But when every possibility can be calculated, which future do you choose?
They say numbers don't lie. That's what I used to tell my clients when I was a risk analyst at Deutsche Bank. Trust the data, I'd say, watching their faces as I explained why their investment strategies wouldn't work. I believed in the purity of mathematics, the certainty of statistics. Then the parallax event turned me into a human probability engine, and I learned that numbers can lie just fine. They lie all the time. My name is Michael Zhao, and I see percentages floating above everyone's head. Chances of death, success, love, failure, an endless stream of constantly shifting probabilities. It started during a client meeting, right as I was explaining portfolio diversification. Suddenly, I could see the numbers. 89% chance my client was cheating on his wife, 43% chance of his hedge fund collapsing, 0.02% chance he'd live past 60 with his current lifestyle choices. I threw up in my waste paper basket and took the rest of the day off. By evening, the numbers were everywhere. Some parallaxers got flashy powers, telekinesis, energy manipulation, reality warping. Me, I got cursed with knowing exactly how everything was going to play out. Do you know how maddening it is to see a 99.97% chance your date is going to end badly before it even starts? To know with mathematical certainty that your boss is going to fire you, 87% probability, because you keep staring at the numbers above her head. The first month, I tried to help people, warned a stranger about a car accident, 78% chance of fatal impact. Told my neighbor to get a cancer screening, early detection, 94% survival rate. Called my mother to reconcile, 51% chance of meaningful relationship repair. But probability is a fickle thing. The mere act of warning people changed the numbers. Save someone from a car crash, watch their death probability spike in other ways. The universe, it seems, likes its balance sheets reconciled. That's when Victor found me. I was drinking in a bar, trying to ignore the death probabilities floating above everyone's head when a man sat next to me with no numbers at all, just static, like a broken TV channel.
The numbers?
He said with a thick Eastern European accent.
They're driving you mad, yes?
Victor was part of what he called a private investment group. They had use for someone who could see probabilities. The pay was excellent. The morality was flexible. I told myself I was still an analyst, just with better tools. Victor's group would identify potential targets, companies, individuals, sometimes entire market sectors. I'd calculate the probabilities of various intervention scenarios. Other parallaxers would then ensure those probabilities became reality. We weren't technically killing anyone, just adjusting the numbers. A CEO with a 31% chance of making a disastrous merger, bump it to 98%. A whistleblower with a 64% chance of going public, reduce it to 2%. Mathematical manipulation at its finest. The money was incredible. The power was intoxicating. For 2 years, I played God with probability itself. My predictions helped Victor's organization amass billions. We crashed markets, toppled corporations, reshaped entire industries, all clean, all technically legal, all just numbers on a page. I should have known it wouldn't last. The problem with seeing probabilities is that eventually you have to look at your own. I've been avoiding it for months, but one morning I caught my reflection in my penthouse window. The numbers above my head were clear. 99.99% chance of violent death within 24 hours. Victor's organization had a policy about liability management. I ran, called in every favor, emptied every account, but you can't outrun probability. By sunset, I had assassins on my tail, other parallaxers who could bend reality in ways my numbers couldn't predict. The static surrounding them made them nearly invisible to my power. That's when I met her, Raylyn Weaver, the displacement specialist. I saw her probability halo before I saw her. 87% chance of successful rescue, 92% chance of moral conviction, 64% chance of getting everyone killed anyway. She and her underground group had been tracking Victor's organization for months.
The numbers don't control you.
She said as we hid in one of their dimensional pockets.
They're just information. What matters is what you do with it.
I gave her everything, names, operations, future targets. The probabilities of taking down Victor's organization were still terrible, but for the first time since the Parallax event, I stopped caring about the numbers. Now I'm part of Raylyn's network, but not as a field operator. I run probability analyses for rescue operations, calculate safe routes, identify at-risk parallaxers before the government or private organizations can grab them. The numbers are still there, still maddening, but they're tools now, not chains. Yesterday, I saw a new number floating above my head. 46% chance of redemption. Not great odds. But I'm learning that some things are worth doing even when the numbers don't add up. Victor's still out there recruiting other probability manipulators. The government's containment squads are getting better at their job. And every day I see the chances of global catastrophe tick slightly higher. But I also see other numbers. The survival rate of parallaxers we rescue, up 23% this quarter. The success probability of our next mission, challenging but doable at 67%. The chance that we're making a real difference, 51% and climbing. They say numbers don't lie, but maybe the truth isn't always about certainty. Maybe it's about what we do when the odds are against us. Because here's the real probability. 100% chance that tomorrow we'll try again, no matter what the numbers say.
Author's note. The probability of this being just one of many stories from the Parallax event? Absolutely certain. Some say Michael still runs the odds for the displacement underground, though he's learned to look past the numbers floating above his head. Most days. Interesting, isn't it? How Raylyn's fractured reality intersected with Michael's probability streams. The shadows keep whispering that this wasn't coincidence. But then again, what is coincidence in a world where reality has learned to bend? I've been watching them all. The teenager whose voice creates symphonies of destruction. The chef who bottles perfect moments in time. The librarian trying to keep Lovecraftian horrors confined to their proper section. Their stories are starting to overlap in ways that make me uncomfortable. Something is using these powers like ingredients, mixing them together, testing combinations. The shadows grow darker each day, and in the spaces between moments, I keep seeing patterns that shouldn't be there. But perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself. There's a doctor who can carry others' pain for exactly 7 minutes and 13 seconds. Her story might help explain why the number keeps appearing. Or maybe we should talk about the 7-year-old boy who broke reality in the first place. The shadows are getting insistent now. They want me to tell you about Asset 2174, whose blood carries computer code that could expose everything. But that story, well, that story has consequences even I'm afraid to face. Keep watching the spaces between moments. And if you see numbers floating above people's heads, or reality starting to crack like glass, run. Run fast. Until next time, the Parallaxers.